So, hello everyone, I'm Heitor Marinho from Brazil, and today I'm presenting to you guys this work we did in Alagoas, Brazil, that is in northeast of Brazil. I'm a not native English speaker, so sometimes I will say some words in Portuguese. My presentation is called Modeling and Analysis of Interventions Directed by Race and Gender of Students in the Mitigation of School Dropout in Brazil. But at first, who am I? I'm a Master of Science in Social Psychology and a Bachelor in Psychology for the Federal University of Paraíba in Brazil. And today I'm a PhD candidate in also in psychology, but for the Federal University of Bahia in Brazil too, in the northeast of Brazil. I'm a research manager on the School Route Protection System project, SPTE, in Brazil, that is hosted by Leogildo Freire, my colleague, that will present after me. This presentation is funded by the Ministry of Education of Brazil, and we are doing this in the Federal University of Alagoas and doing some studies all along the Brazil because it's a continental country with lots of difference of engagement and invest funding because of gender, race, and classes. An overview, school dropout, we analyze school dropout as an interactional and institutional phenomenon, and the school dropout in Brazil has some implications such as traditional warning systems, like you can see the students that reprobate the classes, the years, they return to the same year in Brazil. I know that in some places like Europe, they don't have this system in some countries. And we create a relational model to analyze this phenomenon, the school dropout, that is a computational, psychological, and pedagogical instrument called IA-free. And IA-free is digital. It's a form that you can put information there in a digital form or with pencil and paper, because we have some places in Brazil that don't have access to internet. And for today, this presentation, we use synthetic data because of the general protection data of Brazil. So as we are dealing with under 18 years students, we have this law that protects the data and personal information. So we use psychometrics to create synthetic data that replicate the reality of what we are getting in our data sets to replicate our analysis and preventing the exposition of these students. And we analyze in my work, but tomorrow Annie and Julia will present other works about this data. And after me, Leogildo will present all the system, but I'm talking about race, gender in Brazil because I'm a social psychologist, you know. I have to to be critical about it. And with this system, we are free. We can create interventions based on the student's experience in the dimensions to prevent them to drop out school. Like what are the relations of the students with other students, the students with their families, the students with the school professionals, the students with the school context, and it's a self-person related form measure. So the students talk about their experience. It's not like a counselor or a social worker. Is they talking about their personal experience. So this is giving to them protagonism and put them in the first place. Like our colleague told, they are like our children. So here I have some information about this Brazil system. Let me see if I can show here to you guys. I press this pen to like an indicator.
You want to indicate?
Yes.
Yes, the mouse, but backwards.
I see. So in Brazil, we have if childhood education to 3 years. They go to creches that are preschool where the parents can put the children there and they can work and they can be to newborns to 3 years in the creches. We have the uh, fundamental years that are for 1 to 5 years. And the final years, it's called fundamental second fundamental, that's for 6 and 9 years. And the final stage before the high school, it's the ensino médio, like I think it's high school in the US. And they are like 15 to 70 years. And as I told, in Europe, we are comparing here for the presentation. They usually don't have the infanto juvenil, the child to newborns in 3 years, but the fundamental students have it's mandatory here and also in Brazil. But the ensino médio, the upper secondary education, it's very different in Brazil and here in Europe. So we are analyzing the basic education system in Brazil to see what are making the students don't go to the second school, don't go to the university, and what are the implications. It's important to mark that this work is all done in public education in Brazil because it's very different. We can't control like how private schools are dealing with it, but in the public education we can talk with the ministers, the secretaries, and do some studies to give them a relatory saying that, oh, your school has these problems, your students are disengaged like with the communities, with their families. So it's a very good system instruments because you can track what are the levels of students' engagement in Brazil. Some characteristics of Brazilian education is that we have 12 years of basic education to 9 years of elementary school, followed by 3 years of upper secondary education. And public-based education is free and compulsory, so you don't pay for anything, only taxes, of course. Free, it's a way to say it. And it's covered approximately 47 million students. So, Brazil, it's huge and continental. So we have lots and lots of students around, and around 18% of Brazilian students are enrolled in public schools. And the system is marked by considerable socioeconomic and regional heterogeneity. Like if you go to south of Brazil, they are more richer than in north of Brazil. And in north of Brazil, you have the rainforests, is a difficult access as educational system. And our challenge is because we have persistent dropout indicators. Upper secondary education concentrates the highest dropout rates, and particularly during transitions between cycles, constituting a long-standing public concern. Like today, our students with 15 to 70 years, they are saying like, why I'm going to study if the expectation to get more money is not going to the college, it's not going to the university. I can build myself, I can be an impresario, I don't know the word now, but I can do other stuff not given by education. What we aim? What we aim this project is to examine how the intersectional markers of class, race, and gender are determinants in risk analysis and in the formulation of dropout prevention strategies through an academic year. So we do a forms in the beginning of the year, the school years, and in the middle and in the final step, in the final month of the semester, to see if your interventions are doing effect, like these students with high dropout risks, they are getting lower or not, but based in your interventions. And in Leo Gildo's presentations, he will show to you guys the levels and the dimensions and some interventions you can do. Our method, we did a synthetic sample of 10,000 cases derived from a real data set of 3,678 students from 4 states of Brazil. These students are in pilot studies because the secretaries call us to do this relatory. And with Julio, our psychometrists, we can do a synthetic sample. And the procedure was that synthetical data was generated using the Gaussian copula technique, which estimates new responses based on the relation between the observed variables in the real data set, reproducing its relations. So with synthetical data, we can replicate the real data, and it's valid and fidelity. Imagine. AI is taking everything. This is an image representing how it works. I think the presentation will be available afterwards so you can see it. But it creates like 10,000 cases, and we look at the synthetical data and the real data to see if they are close to the real and the acceptance decision, if they are replicating in a good way the reality of the data we feed the AI. So here you can see table with lots of numbers. I will pass this slide because in the others you can see this is representing all the synthetical data set, how it was the characteristics of your participants. Another one describing the variables, sex, employment status, residence locations. As you can see, we did studies in urban area, indigenous communities, quilombolas communities, and all contexts of education in Brazil, not only in the urban part, but in the countryside also. Our instrument, the Alternative School Dropout Risk Factor Assessment Instrument, or IAFRI-A, is a data collection tool created from mapping relational factors that influence students' retention in school. We have 5 dimensions: student school professionals, student family, student community, and student. All these dimensions can track the risk of dropout of the students, and we have 14 factors of attention. So depending on the students' responses, we can track where they are more about where is the most risk part of dropout. Like it's the students' community. If you see, we have favelas in Brazil. So if the school is located in a very poor region that criminality, it's in this factor the student can drop out the school more likely than others. This is our mandala that represents the factors and the dimensions, and Leojudo will talk more about it. And our results showed that even being male or female, there was not a effective difference in any dimension, and it was like unexpected for us because we know that sexism has a very important is a very important risk factor in Brazil. So the women can drop out school more than men. They can like we have problems with marriage of under 18 years female students. We have all the questions of sex, you know. You can see in television. We know it. And here you can see some factors that were the percentage of vulnerability by sex, and student school was very similar, and we have some difference, not much such a risk factor, because the student school is the principal, you know. Let me paste this slide down. And when we look at the racial dimensions in Brazil, it's important to say that in our country, brown people and black people are in a same category. They are everyone is negro. Negro is like the junction of brown and black people. But brown people with lightened black people with lightened skin, they have more access to things than black people, and it's a very big discussion this now in Brazil, because people are talking brown people are black people, but for the social movement of black people, yes, in Brazil. I see that other countries isn't the same. And you can see there was not such a difference, but you know that racism in Brazil is a big question, just as sexism is the percentage of vulnerability. And our discussion is that the relational and systematic nature of school dropout is based on social difference. We can see it when we go to the schools to give to the professors the relatory, and the school directors, they talk to us that our female students have these problems, our Black students have these problems, and the other ones, the hegemonic groups, have less problems, but they are also have problems. And we have a weakness in the connection between school and community. So this connection of how the community around the school see the school and the students is very important for us. So we have to integrate the students with the school that is, but it's close to them, and gender difference and the need for specific interventions. The regions of Brazil are very different. As I told, in South, it's a richer part of Brazil, but not the north part of Brazil, with more indigenous people and more Black people, we have specific interventions to be done to combat racism and sexism and other types of genocides that's keeping going even today, 2026. And the SPTE, that's our project, it's to create a system that we can replicate in all over the national region of Brazil to track the problems, that the risk factors of these students. And Leogildo will talk about it in the next presentation. We have a cycle of implementation of this system to track and make interventions. Here are some images that you can see to represent how we are done this and the workflow that we are done in Brazil. And concluding remarks is how we can promote equity educational institutions. And my response is, as a social psychology, is investing in critical pedagogy, such as Paulo Freire and bell hooks, because you have to talk with the students, and we are doing this job, putting them in the first as the first step of your interventions, asking them what are the risks of dropout to them, and invest in critical psychology, taking the epistemologies of the South and the global South and with its specificities to say, so we have specific problems and we are not going to the North and to the Europe to see how we can combat this problem because it's a local problem. So we know that colonialism has its questions, but we have to go to our personal solutions to these problems. Okay, some reference and my contact here. Follow them on Instagram.